Hi all, today we'll discuss about microservice roadmap. So in that microservice, by using a Spring Boot, if I'm using a microservice pattern, what all are the technology and things we are using to develop a microservice based applications? So the backend mostly will have a Java. So the Java with a Spring Boot microservice. So here these all are the things are there, like which we have to use. Suppose if we are going for this microservice development, so the technology we can use either Java and the Python, .NET, and Node.js and Golang. So this is all the language which I have to prefer. So that language will be either any of them, Java, Python, .NET, Node, and Golang. So this is the language which I have to use. So coming for the database, what type of database we need to use for the microservice pattern? So if you are following microservice Spring Boot with microservices, in that cases we have a two database. One is SQL database, another is NoSQL database. So in SQL database we'll have a Oracle, MySQL, Postgres. So any of them you can use, depends on the project requirements and all. So that is part of SQL. Coming for the NoSQL, that is a MongoDB, Cassandra, HBase, DynamoDB. So these all are the NoSQL part. So which depends on the requirement in your project. Some of the project will have a multiple database also will be there. Either SQLs also will be there, NoSQLs both will be there. So we seen in our project also Oracle is there is a SQLs and MongoDB is a NoSQL. So this is the database which I have to use if I am developing any application by using a Spring Boot microservices related pattern. Depends on the technology also. So the technology we can have a Java, Python, .NET, Node, and Golang. So this is the language, and database will have a SQLs and NoSQLs. Now coming to when you have developed the applications, then there will have a some container mechanism. So we need to create a Docker image or Alexi image and all. So mostly we are creating a Docker image which will be create a container for that applications, whatever you develop. So for that they will create a container, and container will have a orchestration. So while we create a container, if you are using any Docker image or Docker pattern, then you have a container orchestration. So for that container orchestration we'll have a Kubernetes, OpenShift, and Istio. So these all are the different terms, and different companies are there which will be provide this orchestration. So right now we can use we are using mostly Kubernetes, and some of the company use Docker Swarm, some of the company will use OpenShift, some of the company will use Istio and all. So these all are the container orchestration. So in microservice roadmap we will consider one is container. So container will contain Docker, Alexi, and others. Kubernetes will have a container orchestration. There will have a different type of orchestration is there. Docker, Swarm, OpenShift, and this all. Now, if we will go for this API management, so in API management, we'll have a run scope and MuleSoft and all. So that MuleSoft we can manage through the API, or we have a Swagger. So if you are using a Spring Boot microservice project, so most of the cases are .NET based. So there we used Swagger. So Swagger's, MuleSoft, and Run Scope are there. API management, which will be manage the API. So we created multiple API by using controllers. So that API which need to be managed by the API management. Now we'll go for the cloud provider. So either any of the cloud we can use, while if you are using microservices pattern. So either AWS, Azure, GCP, Oracles, and all. We have a many of the clouds are there in market. Depends on the requirement and company type we can use. So most of the famous is Azure and AWS we are using. Others we have a Google Cloud, Oracle Clouds, and IBM Clouds also there. So we discuss container orchestration, we discuss language, we discuss database, we discuss API management, we discuss cloud providers. Now we will discuss message broker. So if you are running our project based on microservices pattern, in that cases we have a asynchronous and synchronous communication. So mostly we use for the asynchronous communications by using message. So messaging queue brokers and all. So the message brokers will have a multiples are there. The trending which is going on is a Kafka and RabbitMQ. Either anyone you can use in your project, that is related for async communications with this one service microservice to another services microservice. Now we'll go for the service registration. So we have a multiples microservice in our project. So how this will communicate from one to another? So we'll have a service registration, so that service registration will know what type of request is coming and where we have to send that. So how this will be defined? So that service registration, if any request is coming from a microservices, then b microservice, in between we have a service registered with these two microservices, so that they knows like what is request and where to go for which microservices. So mostly service registration is a part of cloud component, a Spring Cloud component. There we used Eureka, Console, and Zookeepers. So these three are the service registry. Depends on the requirement we use this one. So while message brokers we use Zookeepers, and if you have a microservices patterns to registered, in that cases we'll go for this Console or Eureka. So this is a part of service registration. Now suppose if you have developed applications, microservice based application, now you need to monitor this application or you need to add some alert. So if any alert will exceed that, then you have to check this conditions and all, some of the things. So for this monitoring and alerting, we have a Kibana is there, Grafana is there, Prometheus is there. So these all are the tools which is used to monitor and alerting the application. So mostly the famous is Grafana, Kibana, and Prometheus. So these all are. Now we will go for this like suppose if you have developed a microservice pattern applications, then they maybe some request, huge request will come for particular days or particular occasions or functions. In that cases, how you will handle the balancers, that is called load balancers. So that request will go from one to another microservices, that will be create a sub instance, that request will be subdivided and all. So for that cases we'll have a load balancer. So load balancers, either we have a in ribbon will be there, ribbons which will be handles, and then no INX is there, trace fix is there. So these all are the load balancers. So mostly we use a Spring Cloud component as a ribbon, and these all. Now we will go for this distributed and tracing the application. So suppose if you develop the applications, now you not you want to trace this application. Suppose if any errors or anything is happening, in that cases you need to do the distributed tracing. So for that we have a Jenkins and Open Telemetry is there. So Jenkins is a very famous tools which is used to trace the applications. Like if you want to trace all the details, so that you can collect the logs, proper logs, where the request is failing, where which microservice have issues and all. In that cases we have a Jenkins and thus is there, but Jenkins is famous for that. Now we'll have a gateway. So application gateway is there. So if you have a microservices which need to be communicate from other microservices, so for that we have a multiple gateways are there, like applications gateway, have a Kong is there, and then Joule is there. So these all are the famous gateway which we have to use in microservices pattern, either Kong or Joule and all. Now we have a security. So if you are creating any application, in that cases we need to manage the applications to secure. So how you will secure that? We have a JWT token encryptions is there, and many is are there. So auth is there, two factor authentications is there, web security adapters is there. So right now is a JWT which is common, and two factor authentications are there. So for that purpose we can use our applications or microservices as a secure. The next is like a caching. So how suppose some of the data which need to be called as a caching parameters, so how we will handle this caching, how we will create a caching patterns or things. So for that we have a Redis caches are there, Hazelcast is there, and many others. So these all are the famous caches which you need to be introduced in your applications if you are following microservice pattern, so that caching mechanism will work. So yeah, so this the first thing is like, if first you have to consider the language, which type of language you need to take, either Java, Python, .NET and all. And then the second thing is database, either SQL, no SQLs on both, in that Oracle, Mongo and others. Then you have containerizations, like what type of containers you have to follow, Docker. Then orchestration, which container orchestration which need to be followed, either Kubernetes. Then API management to monitor your applications, to manage the applications. So we have a MuleSoft or Sagas, so that you can know like these all are the APIs which will be handled in these applications. Then you have to follow like which cloud you are using, either AWS, Azure and all. And after that, if you are following any asynchronous communication, then you will go for the messaging queue, either Kafka or RabbitMQ and all. Then you have to do those Spring Cloud component is service registration, load balancers, API gateways, either Kong and all. So Eureka service registry and load balancer as a Run, API gateway is a Kong's or Joule. Then after that, we have to trace the applications, monitor the applications and all. So that distributed tracing, we use Jenkins. Monitor and alerting the applications, we have a Kibana, Grafana and all. Now we need to secure applications. So how we will secure the applications, for that JWT token or a two-factor authentication and all. And after that, we have a caching. So that caching mechanism which will be worked on Redis caches, Hazelcast and all. So these all are the way which I have to follow while we are creating any microservices pattern or microservice based applications. That depends on the any of the technology, but will have a same concept. We can use for this either Java based applications, .NET based, Python, Node and Golang. So these things we have to follow while we are following microservice pattern. Thank you.